Hey guys, it's Mike from Indie Development. Want to actually start a tutorial series here about how we can go about making the Tic Tac Toe game that you saw for the Android app. The first thing we're going to go ahead and do is go ahead and set up our project, and we're just going to do the Java file for the actual game right now, and then the next video we'll actually go into maybe setting up the activities. So just name it Tic Tac Toe tutorial or whatever you want to name it there. I used 2.3.3, that's what we've been using in class. So, and you can give whatever you want your package name to be. A little bit on package names. Say you had two companies with the same name, and one was in like California, one was in Ohio, and they both had to work on a similar project. Say it was Tic Tac Toe. The way you would do it is actually kind of go backwards. Like instead of going tic-tac-toe dot the company name dot the state, you'd actually put the state first. So like California dot company dot. So, and for instance, like now, if I was to do any other ones, you could name this separately, and if anyone else um, in a different state did one of the exact same thing, it could actually be separate now. So that's just a little bit about that. You can read up more on it if you're interested, but that's my understanding of it anyway. So we'll go ahead and set up our and as you can see, still generating some of the stuff here. Okay. So we're not really going to go into too much of this right now. We'll get into that later on. So first, we're just going to go ahead and make the actual Java file is going to go with this. So let's go ahead and just right-click on our package name, new class, and let's just name it Tic Tac Toe game. That way you know it's the game file. It's easy for you to keep up with. And we're not going to just make it public. We don't need a main or nothing like that. Okay, so now you got a really basic class. So a few things that we're going to have to do inside this class. We're going to have to set up an array that's actually going to be our game board. Now the game board is actually going to be it's going to be nine squares, just like a regular tic-tac-toe board. So and then we could also go ahead and just set up a now we'll actually use this to inside of our activity to get the size of the board, because we're going to make a board inside our activity as well. So we need the human player, and they're going to be an X. We'll actually do Android. They're going to be O. And then if no one has went in the space yet, that's going to be taken just by an empty space. And we'll need a random. Alright, now if you're using Eclipse, you can just do it the quick way, just mouse over it and import it. If not, you can type import java.util.random to get the random in there. Alright, so now like I said, we're going to have to be able to return the board size for our activity later. So use this right here to actually get the board size. Now, let's go ahead and make our constructor. Alright, inside of our constructor, let's go ahead and set our board up. And we'll loop through our board. And since this will actually be creating the board, we want to make sure that everything is an empty space. Alright, so I'll set our board up, and now we need to go ahead and get a random seed here. Sets up our random. Okay, let's see. Now we're going to have to set a move that's sent to us. We're going to have to be able to clear the board. We're going to have to get the computer moves. We would have to check to see if there's a winner. And if there's any open spaces on the board, the computer's going to have to move. So we need to set all that up. So let's do the clear board first. Okay, so there's public void. And we're actually going to have to clear the board here, and then we're actually going to clear the board that we make in our activity as well. So this clear board here is going to be used to clear this, right? Just the actual code of the Java. And you'll see what I'm talking about when we get farther into it. So all we're doing is when we call clear board, we're just going to loop through the entire board and set everything to an empty space so we get a new board over again. So now if we're going to have to be able to set the move by being able to, we're going to send it from the activity into this code so it can actually, it kind of mimics each other, kind of plays off each other. So we're going to have a method set up in here to where we can get who moved and where they moved from the activity. So we'll set that up. So we're going to pass in where they moved at. So it will be a location. And then who moved. And this is either going to be the X for the human player or the O for the Android player. So far pretty easy. Okay, so now we're going to have to work on if the computer needs to move and to get its move. Okay, so as you can see, we got to return an int here, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to return the move of where it's going to go, and when we return the move, it's actually going to be the location. So we're going to set move by the computer at the location. So what we'll do now is let's go ahead and set that up. So we need to declare an int inside here, a local variable. Okay, so now we need to see if there's a way that the computer can move to actually score the win. So equals 0. Okay. So now as we loop through the board, so we're going to check here and see if the human player, if the slot in there is the human player. So if it's not, I don't know if I could type. Okay, so basically we're checking each of the spaces on the board to see if there's a human player has played in there or if an Android player has played in there. So we want to go ahead and hold the current value of it, which will be an empty space. So we'll go ahead and store that empty space in here. That's an Android player. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and store the empty space. You could actually just, you don't need to do this, but it's good in case you're actually going to use digits or something like that later. So you're going to put the Android player in here. So we haven't wrote this yet, but this is how we're going to check for a winner. And if it's a 3, it would return that the Android player had won. So if that works, then we want to go ahead and commit to that move. Okay, so we don't have this wrote yet, but now I'll go ahead and we can write it right down here. Go ahead and, oh, we'll just wait till we get to it. So we're going to check for the winner after we put the Android player in this slot. Check for the winner. If it returns a 3, which means that the Android player has got a row either horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, then we know that that's a winning move. So we're going to go ahead and set that move and return I, which is going to return the winner for us. Okay, if it's not, then we're going to go ahead and make sure that that goes back to a blank space. So it's going to try to put, what was the Android player, which is an O. So it's going to go through the whole board, and if there's any empty spaces on the board, it's going to put the O there, check and see if that would make the Android player win. And if they would win by putting an O there, then it's going to go ahead and do it. If it wouldn't cause a win, then it's going to go ahead and put that back to an empty space and try the next one. It's going to go through the whole board that way. So that's the first thing that we'll loop through. So if none of that happens, then we want to go ahead and see if we need to block a move. So loop through the board again. I have to put mine down like that, just personal preference. But so now we're going to do, going to go through it again, except this time we're actually going to check if the human player was to move there. So what we could do is actually just copy and paste to shorten this down. So let's just copy this. I'll paste it. Okay. So we're going to loop through, see if there's an open space like we did before. If there is an open space, we're going to go ahead and store the open space in just a local variable. Now instead of putting an Android player here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to check and see if we played there, if we would have won. That way they know that they need to block that space. Alright. And see the human player is going to return a 2, which you'll see later on when we check for a winner. So if there's an empty space, put a human player there like we played like an X, I think is what we are, right? Yeah, the X. So they'll try putting an X in that square. If it would have made us win, then they know that they need to block us there. So they'll go ahead and they'll block us. Now we're going to keep the Android player here for the computer because they want to make the move if it was going to win there. And if it doesn't, if it's not going to need a block, then it's just going to set it back to a blank space. And then if neither one of these is true, we're actually just going to have to make them generate a random move. So okay, so we're going to generate a random integer. I'm going to do this. So we'll generate a random integer here to the board size. And we're going to check and see if that move that we just generated right here, if it has a human player in it. So if it has an X or has an O in that slot already, then we know we can't move there, so it needs to do it again. And then as soon as it doesn't do that, then we'll know to go ahead and put that in. So when while becomes false, which means it's an open space, we need to set the move. And we set the move by taking the number that we found that was actually an empty space, and we want the Android player to make it, so we want it to be an O, and we want the location to be the move that we count here. So when we go up here and look at this, at set move, we're passing in Android, and we're passing in the move right here, and we're going to set that into our array. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll set up the check for winner next. So okay. Where's the other end of this? Do while. Turn move. Okay, it's all set up. Okay, so let's do the check for winner here. Now it's going to be red here because we haven't returned it in yet. So alright, so first thing we need to do is we need to check to see if they have a win horizontally. Okay, so if now since we're going to check horizontally, we'll just do I plus 1 and I plus 2, so you get all the way across. Now if that's true, I want to return 2. Now we're returning 2. 2 will be if X1, which would be a human player. 3 will be if the zeros 1 or O's, which would be the computer player. And if it's a tie, we'll return a 1. And then if there's still, there's a move left open and nobody's won yet, it can't be a tie because somebody else can still move, so we'll return a 0 for that. So now let's just go ahead and copy this one. And let's paste it. Change these to Android. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're just, let me get some kind of diagram up here. Okay, so if we look, we'll just make this real quick. So now when we're checking, we're going to start it at 0. So this right here is 0. Well, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we have 9 squares total. So we're going to start at 0. So if 0 plus 1 plus 2 is all equal to a human or a computer player, we know we won. If 0 is equal to 3, so see it's going to go from 0, then the next iteration of this loop is going to go forward 3 times. So plus 3 would go here. So 3, 4, and 5 is the same thing, that we know we have a winner. And then of course plus 3 would go down to 6 and go across the same thing, so we can check for a winner. Now the one thing that we need to do here is make sure that we return a 3 for the computer. I almost forgot to do that. So that's got that part. Now we need to actually check for the vertical wins, which means going up and down. Now to do that, it's just going to be a little bit different, not so much different, but so we need to loop through again. We're going to do this until it's less than or equal to 2, and I'll show you why in just a second. Okay. If I can get this right. Board I. It'll be I plus 3, I think. So if we open our thing up. So if you're checking here, 1, 2, 3 would bring it down. Okay. 1, 2, 3, bring it down. That would check vertical. So I plus 3. Plus 6. Because you want to do 3 more than that. So if all this is true, then we know that we have a winner, which is the human player. So we return a 2. Now we need to also check the same thing to see if the computer won. So let's do that. And of course we want to change this to a 3 and change these to Android. Okay, so I just did it pretty quick a while ago, so just in case you want to see here, now we're going to do this until it's less than or equal to 2. It's going to start at 0, so it'll be 0, 1, and then 2, and then it's going to stop. So if you start at 0, add 3 to it, it's going to drop you down below it. You add 6 to 0, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, drop you down. It's going to check this line. It's going to go over to this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's going to check this line, and so on. So that's got the verticals out of the way. And now we're just going to check. We don't need to loop through this time, since on the board you'll notice that there can only be 2 verticals. It's either this one or this one. No reason really to loop through the board. We can just set these spaces and check these spaces. So let's go ahead and do that. Inboard 0 is a human player. And the inboard would be 0, be 4, and 8. Okay, so 4. Okay, so if all that is true, or, so if we go back and look at our little image here again, 2, 4, and 6. If 2, 4, and 6 are human players, that means they win as well. So let's go ahead and put those in. Okay, so if either of these statements are true, then we want to go ahead and return the computer, or that's a human one. So we're just going to copy and paste this again. And if this stuff gets like that, you can just highlight and just shift tab, it'll take it back. And then for some reason, returns it all on there. Not what it's supposed to be. I'll just leave it like that, it's fine. Change this to a 3. Go up here and go ahead and just copy Android. And just change these to Android. Okay, so now we've actually checked to see if we have horizontal, vertical, or diagonal wins. So if none of this is true, if we have no winner any of those ways, then we know we can't have a winner whatsoever. So now we need to see, hey, is there an open space left? If there is an open space left, then somebody needs to move, so we need to return a 0. That way they know, hey, somebody still can move, it's not a tie. But if there's no more spaces on the board to move to, and we know we don't have a winner, then therefore it has to be a tie. So now we need to just write the code for that. For a tie. So we'll loop through the entire board. So when we look through the board, if we find a spot that does not have a computer or player X or O in it, then we know that there's still a move open, so we return a 0. So now if we get through this and we go through this for loop, we've already went through all these loops here. We get down to this one, check for a tie, and there's no places that you can move anymore, so we need to go ahead and return a 1. Let them know there's no more moves, nobody's won, so it has to be a tie. And that is going to be pretty much the complete just Java code that's going to go with it. As long as I don't have any errors here, which it looks like I do. Oh, well, yeah. I gotta end it, so I got no semicolon. Okay, so this is going to be, I'll just go over it real quick again. Go ahead and make our declarations, get our board. This is going to be used later on the board size, which is going to be 9. Set up our human Android players, and then the empty space for when nobody's played. Go ahead and set up a random. This will be used to get our board size. We'll use that inside of our activity. This is our constructor, which basically sets up our array, loops through, makes them all empty spaces, and go ahead and seeds are random. This will be used to clear the board, which just loops through again, just like right up here, and sets it back to a plain board, all empty spaces. This is going to be used to set our move, passing in either Android or player, or Android or human, and then the location of where they're going to move on the board. Us in each blank space, and if by putting us into a blank space we do a 1, it knows it needs to play there, so we can't play there and win. So it will go ahead and set that move and return out of the statement. if that can't find anything to block us with, and it's going to actually put that back to a blank space, then it's just going to try to do a random move. So it's going to get a random integer, and it's going to try that integer, try to move to that space on the board. And if that space is already taken by an X or an O, it can't move there, so it's going to do it again. It's going to keep doing it until it finds the space it can move to. You're going to set that move and then return. Now when we check for winner, we're going to check horizontally first, which we already went through that pretty in depth. Return a 2 or a 3 depending on if the human or the Android player won. Same thing with the vertical, then diagonal. And then if none of that's true, loop through the entire board to see if there's any space at all that can still be played in. If it can, go ahead and return out, saying that, hey, there's still open spaces. If there's no open space, return a 1, letting the game know that it's a tie. And I still have a error here. Not sure why. Let's see. Syntax error token. Expected after this. I already did that. Oh, I didn't save it. Should go away now. Okay, that's what it was. It just needed to be saved. Okay, so that's got our Java class that we'll use for the activity, for the Tic Tac Toe activity in our Android application. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was informative, and hopefully you were able to follow it. And if anybody has any comments on how I could have done this better, please go ahead and make sure that you post that up. And I will see you guys later.